All right, here we are with Crypto Daily News. We have a special episode with my friend Adonis Gaitatzis. He actually just completed writing his amazing book called Blockchain and Smart Contracts for Business Leaders. And actually, from what I understand, Adonis, you published it back in June. But tell me, why did you decide to write this book, and what do you feel like was the main purpose and benefit for someone interested in reading it?
Yeah, definitely. First of all, thank you for having me on the show. I was very excited to be here. Well, I wrote this book because I found that there was a lot of really heavy technical information about blockchain, really like for core developers. And then there was like really, really basic, like on the Bitcoin website, like Bitcoin is a currency. And I didn't see anything addressing for people who didn't really program what the technology was and how it was being used, to sort of stimulate them and inspire them to use it in their own projects.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So more as a way to help educate, let's say, the masses in understanding the different benefits and features and potential that this industry, but more importantly, the underlying technology has, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. And what do you think about what's happening in the market today based on your experience in the industry? And, is there anything in your book that goes over what's happened up until this point, just over the last, let's say, 6 months? I know if we look at, let's say, coin market cap, and we go look at the major cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, EOS, XRP, Litecoin, and we look at everything that's happening right now with the market going down, do you think that there is any real reason to be alarmed, aside from the fact that, basically what's happened with the Bitcoin hard fork is that there's been a divergence of hashing power, right? So what are your thoughts on this market that we're in, and what do you feel like is afterwards? And I mean, I'm assuming that your book, regardless of the state of the market, is going to help people better understand why it's happening.
Yeah, let's start with that. So my book really doesn't dive into markets or investments or any of that kind of stuff. It looks at blockchain more as a technology platform, conceptually more like a database, or as a mechanism to solve trust or inter-company cooperation through competitive cooperation, things like that. It touches on the fact that cryptocurrencies can be used as a currency or as an asset, but really doesn't go into that, because I think there's a lot of information out there for people who are interested in investment. And also, I'm more of a technology person myself, so I don't really understand investment as well. So I stay away from that topic. I'm like, I know about technology. I can tell people about technology and how it's used.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so I don't really know about the market so much. I do feel like the blockchain has a tremendous future. It's really, I think, difficult to say that, oh, well, because the markets are down, that Bitcoin is dead or anything like that. Like I saw this news report that Ethereum is dead, and I'm like, I don't think that's possible, because if in any way the value of these cryptocurrencies is tied to the utility that they provide in the market and the use of them, then there's something like gold to me, where it's like gold is, it's shiny and pretty and it's rare, so people treat it like an asset, they store it, but it actually has like real utility. And so part of its value in the marketplace is driven by the fact that it's used for making electronics, for coating glass, for doing all these, like there's these things, making rust-free tooth coatings, things like that. Mm-hmm. So long as people are driven to use the technology, and that it's going to drive the value of the asset in the marketplace, regardless of speculation. Mm-hmm. Right? So I think that what we're seeing is a lull. I really, again, I'm not a market person. I really wouldn't, if I were sitting next to myself asking my opinion of a market analysis, I wouldn't trust it. But I will say that I think that this is a lull, and I think that Bitcoin and Ethereum and all these other cryptocurrencies are going to bounce back because there's just so much utility. And and it's a rare. There's a cap on how much can be owned, so there's a scarcity.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Mhm.
It seems to me, and this is my approach as well with our own token with CDNO, where the more utility we create, the more transactions there will be, and therefore the higher the price will be. And also by doing so, by separating the token from the markets and just increasing the utility of which it provides, essentially it's like what you said earlier. It's not so much as contingent on how the other cryptocurrencies or altcoins are performing at that rate. It's more about like, what can I use this for, regardless of what the price is at, right? So
Right.
I
Yeah.
think you definitely hit it right on the head there. But what would you say is the industry that you're most excited about in terms of what blockchain can disrupt? Because obviously, I actually thought this was so surprising earlier. I was doing some market research, and there's over 2,200 cryptocurrencies on CoinMarketCap, but
Wow.
over 15,000 exchanges. I'm like, what the heck? That to me seems like a gimmick, and I'm just like sitting here like, why would you need more exchanges than the actual number of tokens or currencies that there are? It just kind of boggles my mind. But what industry do you feel is the most exciting as far as what blockchain and crypto can disrupt?
First of all, are you still getting my video? Because my video looks like it's cut.
It actually looks like it stopped here.
Okay, let me try doing this again.
There you go.
Okay, we're back. There isn't a particular industry that I'm interested in right now with regards to blockchain, but here's how I've come to think of blockchain and cryptocurrencies in industry niches. Is like each economy kind of needs its own currency. So if you look at this at a national level or international level, like every country has its own currency. There's Tunisia has the dinar, and France has the euro, and US has the dollar. And one of the reasons for that is that those economies produce and consume their own resources, and they need to be incentivized to operate internally. And if you had one currency for the entire planet, I think it would actually be a big problem, because although it allow people to send money around the world very easily, which is great for making purchases, it has the side effect of being able to pull money out of areas and depress them instantly without any repercussion. Not repercussion. It makes an instantaneous drop in currency in an area that might be producing value and like relying on that currency to survive, right? Mm-hmm. So these countries create these sort of like containers around their currency to encourage interaction inside, right? To facilitate interaction. And I think it actually contributes to things like the enforcement of laws and the enforcement of society and structures, and making sure that businesses operate in a certain way, all like very deep level stuff. And then even within smaller markets, you look at like iTunes, let's say. iTunes technically has their own currency. They've got these like gift tokens. They might be in dollars, denominated in dollars, but the fact is that you buy a gift card and now you can make purchases within the iTunes network, where you buy money in the iTunes network, or video games have their own currency. I think the reason that you see that is that every economy needs to have its own currency. So when you take that to this emerging Bitcoin infrastructure, I think what you're seeing actually is people's tendency to try to figure out, okay, how do I encourage people to consume and create content or enforce rules or whatever inside of a marketplace? And we're in the very beginning stages of this, so I think there's going to be a lot of shift in how this works. But I think that what we're seeing is microcurrencies for microeconomies. And that's really fascinating to me. I think that it's going to be very interesting when people start to figure out how to interoperate those microeconomies, because really, like, you look at the national level again, and the dollar is a universal economy within the US, but there's actually many microeconomies that exist. There's there's industry verticals like education and car manufacturing and all these other things that could benefit from having their own currency, but they're all using the dollar. Mm-hmm. Right? There's something going on there. But Like when they talk about markets in the US, you could say stocks are sort of like a representation of the value of these different industries and companies where they fluctuate over time. And it's representative of like fundamentally like a barter type system. What we're really doing when we use the dollars is trading goods and services, right? So the dollar is a numeric representation of what the value of those goods and services are, but it's really complex. So if you have a system where like you can buy so many, I don't know, let's say tires to put into so many cars, and so much rubber is manufactured, but some of that rubber is used somewhere else, and blah, 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 then though you could have like a rubber dollar and like a car dollar and all those other things. But by having a currency that ties between them, like the dollar, then you can have multi-vertical interoperability, right? Mm-hmm. So I think what's happening now, to summarize, is that we're seeing these microcurrencies for these microeconomies where like one person creates a blockchain for a mesh network, let's say, and people can buy bandwidth on this mesh network. And so they're using the mesh network currency to buy bandwidth of the mesh network. So it all ties in together. But now how do they trade bandwidth for, coffee? Well, now you need a currency to interoperate between them, or some kind of exchange or whatever that create liquidity between those two markets. And I think that the combination of those two things, the microcurrency and microeconomy and the liquidity between markets, is something that we're discovering how to build from the ground up using blockchain. Mm-hmm. And that's super fascinating to me.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring this up in terms of like how it's almost like microeconomies. And that's the way I look at it too. Bitcoin, for instance, even though it's the one that's the most popular, still even today after Ethereum's proven to be quicker in terms of transacting, it's like I look at it where we have Bitcoin as the US dollar, Ethereum maybe the pound or euro, and then we have like the three others that are top of people's mind that are the other types of foreign currencies that are still used and accepted all over the world. Mm-hmm. What I thought was really interesting was last year, when the crypto markets were peaking around this time, and the market cap was over 500 billion. And at the same time, the daily Forex market is between 6 and 7 trillion. So it's almost like 10% or 9% of what's happening in Forex at that peak that it was at. So, I mean, if just the population alone increased of the number of people using it and the volume, the transactions, then just through that one action alone, the price will go up. But I think what else was interesting was hearing a quote from Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, where he was saying like right now there's only 40 million people using cryptocurrencies, but in the future, in the next 5 years, he expects that number to be over 1 billion. So wow. It really confirms what I'm saying. And just if that's not even based on the appreciation of what the company is providing through tokenizing its value and trying to get its token listed so people can buy it. But I think it's really interesting how all these different technologies are tying together where, like you said, I just think it's going to be so interesting in the next 5 years to see how like blockchain and the sharing economy, and like we got all this stuff happening with AI and machine learning. There's AR, VR, there's like autonomous cars. There's like all this crazy stuff happening right now in tech, and especially blockchain is probably the number one thing on people's lips, talking about it left and right. But I think that over the next 6 months, we're probably going to see Bitcoin, Ethereum, all the major cryptocurrencies kind of move from this stage of its infancy. And right now we're like in the transition period going towards its adolescence of maturing, and almost like a brush fire that eliminates all the brushes and leaves the trees. So that way the forest can provide more nutrients to those trees. I mean, it's something that has to happen, like the consolidation period where, maybe there's like a taco coin out there. I'm sure there's a taco coin if I look, but it's like, yeah. Do you really need a taco coin? Who's going to make a burrito coin? Well, what about a nacho coin? All those, once it starts getting into those like different uses, I'm like, okay, I understand the whole idea of tokenizing value, but do you really need to go there? Like you said, for instance, if people were able to do it by vertical, like commodities, and it looks like your screen froze, by the way, but like commodity
for people to make purchases.
Exactly.
Right? Like the thing, like let's say you've got a taco coin and a burrito coin, and let's say that those taco coins are not, instead of like oh, I want to buy tacos with taco coin, but instead they're digital representations of tacos, then now what you are doing is you're buying tacos, right? And so it's like, it just happens that there's a taco coin that's sort of like the contract. It's like the digital equivalent of a contract to own a taco, right?
Yeah.
Or like maybe it's a better example might be, I don't know if you know ethereum. They're pretty cool. What they're doing, among other things, is they're making it so that you tokenize planes and plane parts. And so if you own a plane, traditionally you have like a title or whatever, like you own the title of the plane. It's kind of like owning a car. You have like the title of the paperwork to own the car. And so, we used to use paper for all these things, and you have like a little certificate and it would say like your name and someone's signature, and you get like that little guilloche, squiggly pattern around the edge. And then congratulations, you now have a title to own, a property like a plane or a house or something like that. And then if that gets destroyed, well, then you have no proof that you own that thing anymore. And with enough work, someone can forge it, or they can take it away from you, or they can, a government agency can say, these contracts are no longer, valid or whatever like that. And with crypto, you basically have a digital equivalent to what used to be this paper mechanism. And so this title to own this plane now exists on the blockchain. And so now everyone who wants to fact check it can say, yeah, that guy owns that plane. And whoever agrees that that plane is represented by that blockchain, which might be the owner of the plane might say, I'm not giving up this plane unless someone buys the title off of me, buys the crypto off of me, and I'm willing to share this plane with people, but they all have to chip in. I'm willing to sell up to 50 shares of this plane or whatever. They can divide it up. Whereas it was tough to do that with a contract before. So the person, the plane coin, or ethereum, literally in this case, ethereum isn't necessarily a currency that people are like, they just own because, oh, now I have 50 ethereum and I can buy more ethereum and I can trade it for Bitcoin. It's like, that represents a plane. And so it's a hard asset, in the same way that having a title before used to be proof of that ownership of that asset.
Yeah, and I think that kind of like leads me to what I was thinking about, which is the whole advent of stable coins. IBM was doing their thing with Stellar's protocol and WorldWire, and then we have Gemini. They announced their Gemini dollar like 2 or 3 months ago. There's companies in the real estate blockchain space creating stable coins backed by real estate assets. And I think those are probably going to become more popular in 2019, especially, not only because of the fact that it makes sense to not have your token and value contingent on how the market's performing, but also because of the fact that it just makes more sense for that same reason I just said. A lot of people, I think, that invested in 2017, they really got like shocked to see that, oh, I probably shouldn't have bought it like 15K plus to 20.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like now there's not as much consumer confidence, but hopefully through the books like the one that you made, people will be able to understand and educate themselves more on what cryptocurrency can do, where it's headed, what blockchain can do, and what its potential is.
Yeah. It's a bit like homeownership in like 2008. Like if you bought a house purely because you thought that there was a market potential to sell it for more, like you get a ninja loan and you're like, I just got a house. I'm going to get 3 houses. I'm going to sell them in 5 years. Well, if you're doing it purely based on the speculative nature of it, then you can get burned, right? That happened in the real estate market. And the real estate market was something people were like certain that because it's a hard asset, it can't deflate in value. It's always buy land, right? Well, that's not really the case because they can overproduce houses, which is what they did. And they can oversell titles, which is what they did. And so it's actually one of the reasons Bitcoin was born. So the irony, of course, is that if people are treating Bitcoin as a speculative asset because it's because it's a scarce resource, then they're falling into the same trap that they did when they were buying houses. The reality is that you can also look at the underlying technology and say, hey, is this something worth banking on for its utility, right? And that's how I look at it, in part because I'm not a good speculative buyer. I'm like what we were talking with these guys that buy it at 15K. I'm like, oh my God, this guy buy it. So I think it's with any investment strategy, it's useful to look at more than one dimension, more than just, is it spiking, right? Can I make money tomorrow with it? And if the answer is, if you look further into it and you find that the answer is, oh, this can do something real, this can do something interesting, or this has some really interesting properties, and you believe in what it's doing, then I think it's worth investing in regardless, because then it's going to continue to exist, right? But then, sorry, going back to the stable coin, I can tie that into the housing as well. People think of housing as stable, but it's not. Housing is an asset market. People, the value of houses goes up or down over time, and so I think a truly stable coin may not ever exist, because people's desire to own anything changes with time and circumstance.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think in general, the more people understand blockchain and smart contracts and just really the industry as a whole, it's going to be so much more beneficial to them. And with that being said, where can people go to find out how to get your book? What do they need to do? Is it on Amazon? Do they go to your website?
It's on Amazon, yeah. You can search for blockchains and smart contracts for business leaders. I can send you the link and you can include it in.
Okay.
Perfect.
Well, let's definitely talk some more after this. But Adonis Gaitatzis, everyone, I want you guys to check out his book, Blockchain and Smart Contracts for Business Leaders. Definitely a good read if you guys want to see what's coming in the future, how this technology is prone to disrupt the entire industry, even the one that you work in, whatever it may be. Blockchain is going to have so many different applications, I think, across the boards, and this book right here is going to tell you a lot about it. So in any event, thanks again, Adonis. I hope you have a great night, and I'm sure the folks at home appreciate this information that we're sharing with them.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to talk more about it, especially like what utility the blockchain has in different industries. And I really want to see.
Ridiculous. Without even trying, how do they do this? Is 10% luck, 20%